You are listening to Aeri Awakening by Kai Stormhaven. Chapter 33. Lorenessa tried to watch Shalay and Jessica without being too obvious about it. The two of them had seemed indifferent to each other before she left. Now, the two of them were all smiles and friendly banter. What had happened while she was gone? Had she lost her opportunity with Jessica? Or Shalay? A cold pit opened where her stomach had been as she pulled her pack up and moved toward the door. Jessica was animatedly telling Shalay about a time she had changed the shoes of one of the other students at the Arcane Arts building to slowly grow bigger throughout the day, while resetting to the correct size if they were removed. Shalay laughed delightedly, giving Jessica a look that went beyond simple affection. Raya fell in beside her as they exited the room and descended the stairs. She knew Raya could feel her emotions. It was surprising to see her adoptive mother smiling indulgently as she looked down at her as they walked. "What?" Lorenessa asked dully, struggling to find the enthusiasm to question the tall woman, as the emptiness in her abdomen sapped her emotional matrix. "I did you a favor?" Raya informed her, clearly fighting to keep her smile from widening. Lorenessa raised a doubtful eyebrow up at her but remained silent. The void in her core devoured any sense of curiosity or interest. "I convinced those two to give each other a chance," Raya continued as Lorenessa remained silent. "I told them they were a package deal, and you wouldn't be interested in just one of them." Lorenessa stopped as feeling came rushing back, a horrified kind of embarrassment, replacing the void of emptiness within her. "You didn't?" "Yep," Raya confirmed, her smile widening as she pulled Lorenessa back into motion. "I did. As you can see, it worked." Lorenessa felt a flood of conflicting emotions as she exited the inn and walked out onto the dim streets. Elation flooded her system so powerfully that she felt woozy. Elation was followed by consternation. She was certainly not the kind of person to follow customs or rules, but the idea of being in a relationship with two people at the same time triggered a sense of reluctance and discomfort she wasn't sure she could ignore. She surreptitiously glanced at where Lochnar was walking on the other side of Raya, expecting a scowl of disgust on his face. He saw her nervous glance and shook his head disdainfully. "Is this really where you're going to start drawing lines in the dirt for what you find morally acceptable?" Lochnar asked with a derisive snort. Lorenessa felt some of her apprehension evaporate. Lochnar had been the closest person she had to a father for most of her life. She couldn't lie to herself and pretend his opinion of her didn't matter. Shalay moved up next to them as they made their way through the dimly lit streets. There were a few nobles moving through the streets on litters. It was just past midnight. Not all nobles stayed up until dawn at the various parties throughout the city. Lorenessa spotted one of Baron Lynch's sons walking in their direction. It was rare to see a noble actually walking. She studied him with her Aeri as he drew near. He was surprisingly sober, a rarity for nobles at this time of night. A small dagger belted to his hip was his only weapon. She searched her memory for his name as he reached them. "Good evening, Lord Caleb." Lorenessa greeted him with a polite nod. "I trust you are well?" He paused, staring at her with a frown. "Tolerable, my lady," he finally replied, failing to match her face to a name. "Forgive my rudeness, but I'm having trouble recalling your—" He broke off when he saw Raya, his eyes glazing over as her radiant aura washed over him. Lorenessa bit her lip to hide a smile and stepped between him and Raya. He shook his head to clear it, and his eyes refocused. "Apologies, my ladies, but your beauty is truly bedazzling," he breathed in a bemused voice. "I know, right?" Shalay agreed with an impish smile as she eyed Lorenessa appreciatively. Lorenessa silently cursed her cheeks as heat flooded her face. Lord Caleb blinked, glancing at Shalay uncertainly before clearing his throat and starting over. "May I know your names, my ladies?" Lord Caleb asked politely. "This is Raya." Lorenessa gestured toward Raya. "My name is Lorenessa." Lord Caleb recoiled as she finished, his eyes growing wide with sudden fear. "That's cruel," Raya accused Lorenessa reprovingly. "I'm not here to kill you, Lord Caleb." "What?" Lorenessa assured the white-faced nobleman. "You wouldn't have seen me if I was." "You're not?" he asked nervously, eyeing her doubtfully. "We're just taking Princess Jessica to the palace," Lorenessa informed him, gesturing to where Jessica stood behind Shalay, struggling not to laugh. Your Highness! Lord Caleb dropped into a deep bow as his face paled even more. Apologies. I did not see you. It's no problem at all, Lord Caleb, Jessica smiled disarmingly. Though I must say, it's unusual to see a nobleman sober and walking through the streets at this time of night. Might I inquire as to where you have been? Lord Caleb swallowed as he straightened. His eyes flickered to Lorenessa before he answered in a voice that quavered slightly. I was visiting Lord Davian and Lady Claire. They are old friends of our family and only recently returned to the city. It really is a small world, isn't it? Lorenessa asked Jessica wryly. She turned back to Lord Caleb. How are Davian and Claire? Lord Caleb licked his lips nervously. You know Lord Davian and his wife? Their daughter is one of our traveling companions, Lorenessa informed him with a short laugh. I'm sure she'll be ecstatic to see them again. I'm sensing another Delphite father, Raya commented lightly. What do you think? Locknar's silence was eloquent, punctuated by an irritated sigh. At Raya's words, Lord Caleb's eyes widened in alarm, and he took an involuntary step backward before he caught himself. Didn't Kalath say that the last member of the Delphite Order had died years ago? Shalay asked Locknar with a frown. The last original member, Locknar growled in disgust. And good riddance. They're the reason the planet is one disaster away from total destruction. My father has a less than cordial relationship with Kalath. Raya told the bewildered nobleman with an apologetic smile. They have a lot of bad history. I'm actually a member of the Delphite Order as well. Lord Caleb looked like he might faint as he reeled from one shock to another. At Raya's revelation, he gasped in disbelief. You're Raya, but you died. Almost, Raya agreed with a nod. If my father hadn't found me and brought me to Kalath, I would still be in a state worse than death. Is Duke Rendiver in the city too? Lord Caleb asked eagerly, his eyes lighting up. We're hoping to see him tomorrow, Raya answered smoothly. I'm sure he'll want to meet with your family while we are here. Are Claire and Davian still over on Lunitra Court? Yes, my lady, Lord Caleb replied in a voice that bordered on reverence. Perfect, Raya smiled brightly. We'll have to take Ariana to see them tomorrow. Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you, Lord Caleb. Please give my regards to Patina and Jerry. Lord Caleb bowed deeply. I will, my lady. They continued walking, leaving an awe-stricken Lord Caleb standing in the street to stare after them. Seriously, what are the odds? Shalay demanded suspiciously. I mean, just how many of these Delphites are out there? I've been avoiding thinking about it, Lorenessa sighed with a rueful shake of her head. The idea that something else is controlling my life is disturbing on so many levels. Lorenessa stopped in concern as Shalay held both hands to her head with a groan. What's the matter? I don't know, Shalay whimpered, wincing as she pressed her palms tightly against her temples. I'm having an overpowering sense of déjà vu. Lorenessa glanced at Raya pleadingly, hoping she could do something to help Shalay. She felt Raya's Aeri delving into Shalay probingly for several seconds. Shalay slowly released her head and took a deep, quavering breath. I'm not seeing anything wrong with her, Raya murmured in a concerned voice. Is it causing actual pain, Shalay? Not physical pain, Shalay replied carefully. It's just extremely disorienting and overwhelming. It's like my mind is stuck between the pages of a book that I can't get to open. All the information is there, but I can't get to it. It's fading away now. I can relate, Lorenessa said softly. It sounds like what happened to me when that word from Earth popped into my head the other day. Angel. Shalay let out a pained cry and clasped her head again, dropping to her knees. She moaned in distress as she cradled her head tightly. Lorenessa rushed down next to her, fear flooding her mind as she watched Shalay helplessly. Jessica was on the other side of Shalay a second later, wrapping an arm around her comfortingly. Okay, now we know what word not to say, Raya murmured in a troubled voice. Something very strange is going on here. She's pulling from core soul memories, Locknar remarked musingly. The mortal body isn't made to handle core memories. It overwhelms the brain. It's rare that a person can reach that deeply into their soul during mortality. You're going to need to avoid words that trigger recall. Otherwise, you're probably going to go mad. Shalay groaned from where she knelt on the road. She had her arms wrapped around her head. Lorenessa hesitantly reached out and placed a comforting hand on Shalay's head. A moment later, Shalay let out a relieved sigh. "I think it's over," she breathed quietly. She slowly stood back up, leaning on Jessica for balance as she regained her equilibrium. "I don't understand, Lochnar. What's the difference between soul memory and core soul memory?" "Soul memory is just the memory you acquire across incarnations," Lochnar replied, his voice empty of aggression for the first time since she had met him. If anything, his tone was slightly subdued. "Core soul memory is who you were before any of your incarnations, the pure spirit that formed before your first mortal life. It's the root of your personality." "What else?" Raya asked him shrewdly. "There's something you aren't saying?" Lochnar gave her a flat stare that washed right over her with no effect. He grimaced before continuing. "Extremely old souls have a difficult time separating their memories. They rarely keep them sealed away past 30 years of mortality." "What does that mean?" Raya asked, concern thick in her voice. "What happens if they can't keep them sealed away?" "They wake up from the dream," Lochnar replied simply. Lorenessa felt sick as she turned to stare at Shalay worriedly. She guessed Shalay was somewhere in her mid-20s already. If Lochnar were right and she was an older soul, she would have less than 5 years to live. "It's no big deal," Shalay told them with a shrug. "These mortal lives are probably just tiny dots in the span of our souls. It's not like we're gone forever if we die. We just go back to where we came from." "But I don't want you to leave," Lorenessa whispered, the words escaping her throat before she could stop them. Shalay's eyes softened as she observed Lorenessa. "Then we'll just need to make these 5 years count." Lorenessa felt her eyes blur with tears for the first time since she had learned of Raya's alleged death. She stepped forward and pulled Shalay into a tight embrace, feeling a sense of urgency as she held the other woman. Shalay returned her embrace, gently combing her fingers through Lorenessa's hair. Lorenessa scowled as tears ran down her cheeks. This couldn't be the way this story played out. She was already in her mid-30s and had finally found someone special. Fate, or whatever was playing with their lives, better not take Shalay away from her, or she would hunt fate down and make it pay. She felt another arm slip around her waist as Jessica wrapped both of them in her arms. "She's not going anywhere." Jessica declared confidently, "We need her too much, and she's too nice to leave us on our own." Lorenessa smiled through her tears, hoping the princess was right. She saw Lochnar watching them and saw the brutal truth in his unyielding eyes. She looked away, unwilling to accept it. Maybe Thistledown would know of a way to reinforce whatever barrier kept soul memories from leaking into their consciousness. "That's the last of it." Thistledown informed Josh and Thalion in satisfaction as the last plucked chicken dropped into his virtual scrip. "How's the chicken coming along?" "Seems to be done," Thalion replied as he cut a strip of flesh from one of the spitted chickens. "Yep." "It's done." "Let's throw them on some platters and head back then," Thistledown said with a grin. "We'll let the kitchen night staff know that they can come back in now." The three of them exited the kitchen with chicken-laden platters. He could have just used the condensed powder he carried in his pack to make dinner for their party. But he wanted to make it clear to the politicians running the palace that they were going to lose any games they tried to play with him. The kitchen's night staff was waiting nervously just outside the door. Thistledown smiled widely at them as he passed, his serrated teeth plainly visible. "The kitchen's all yours again." "Tell the master cook that Lord Telenar pays his compliments on a well-maintained kitchen, and to inform the seneschal that his hospitality was instructive." The woman nodded nervously, bobbing a deep curtsy before darting back into the kitchen. "The nice part about being in a city full of people that can't use their Aeri is that we can eavesdrop all we want, and they'll never know," Talianan commented as they walked back to their rooms. "I'm definitely going to be observing the seneschal tomorrow morning when they discover there's no more food in the kitchens." "Oh, he'll probably find out within the hour," Thistledown remarked with a wolfish grin. "The kitchen staff starts the breakfast spread well before dawn. As soon as they discover the lack of food in the next few minutes, there's going to be a flurry of panicked household staff running around in a frenzy in an attempt to have something ready in the morning. I guess we're really just punishing the servants then, Talion noted with a sudden frown. It will definitely be a stressful morning for the servants, Thistledown agreed with an indifferent shrug. But that stress will flow uphill to the asses playing games with us. Thistledown smiled suddenly as he sensed Raya and the rest of their party entering the palace. The others just arrived. They should be here in a few minutes. They took the food back to Thistledown's room and set it out on the table. Thistledown walked down the hall to Ariana's room and knocked. She answered with a scowl on her face that vanished as soon as she saw that it was Thistledown. "Expecting someone else?" Thistledown asked with an amused chuckle. "Can't you get him to back off?" Ariana asked in exasperation. "I'm getting really creeped out with his constant hovering. Speaking of creeps, I didn't realize there was a person under that eyebrow of yours. I was beginning to think you were just a sentient shrubbery." Thistledown roared with laughter, making Ariana jump at the sudden explosion of sound. She rolled her eyes at his enthusiasm. "What about Josh?" "I'll have a word with him," Thistledown promised. "We raided the kitchen and brought the food back if you're hungry. What happened to the servant that was going to bring dinner?" Ariana asked with a raised eyebrow. "They're playing political games and told the staff not to feed us," Thistledown replied, a smug smile forming on his face. "We think they'll be a little more accommodating tomorrow." "Why?" Ariana asked suspiciously. "What did you do?" "You'll probably find out tomorrow," Thistledown replied with a smirk. "Did you want to come and eat?" Ariana eyed his mirthful expression steadily for a moment before stepping out into the hallway and following him. They stopped at Laurie's door and invited her over to eat as well. "The others are on their way here too," he informed them as he opened his door. "They should be here in a few minutes." "Where are Michael and Leanne?" Ariana asked when she noticed their absence. "They're satiating a different kind of appetite right now." Thistledown responded dryly. "I'm guessing they'll be pretty hungry in the morning, though." "Gross," Ariana muttered in disgust as she moved over to the table with the chicken. "Is chicken all the kitchens had available?" Thistledown gestured at his virtual script on the table. "We brought a few other things in that bag. Feel free to rummage around in it." There was a knock at the door, followed a moment later by Raya entering. Jesha, Jessica, Laurenessa, and Shalay followed, inhaling the smell of roasted chicken with eager expressions. "How'd it go?" he asked Raya as she walked over and sat down at the table. He could see the concern hiding behind her cheerful eyes. "Any trouble?" "Nothing we couldn't handle," Raya replied with a wry smile. "Why did you have to fetch your own food from the kitchens? And why did you stuff everything in their larder into your bag?" He quickly explained the situation to her, eliciting a wave of golden laughter as he finished. "I see Leanne finally got tired of waiting for my bashful brother to make a move," Shalay commented with a smirk. "It's about time." "Is this another one of those Aeri things where you can all sense everything around you?" Ariana asked in a plaintive whine. "Right, do you know how much easier it would be to reverse engineer things if I could feel it the way you all can?" "You've been in the presence of Shalay, Leanne, Thalion, and Mikal long enough that you should already have started to feel Aeri," Thistledown informed her conversationally. "You could probably start taking lessons. Jesha's got a pretty good understanding of Aeri. If you ask her really nicely, she'll probably teach you." Jesha smiled tolerantly at Thistledown before turning to Ariana. "I could definitely teach you." Ariana's eyes grew wide and a brilliant smile lit her face. "Really? Really? Oh, this is going to be so amazing! Thank you, Jesha!" Jesha beamed back at her. "No problem, Ariana. It will be fun." "Why would being around us make a difference in her ability to use Aeri?" Shalay asked with a frown. "Is this that universal link thing you were telling us about back at the cottage?" "Exactly!" Thistledown nodded approvingly. "Ariana was infected as soon as she came into contact with the four of you, so the ability should have begun expressing itself in her DNA several days ago." "What do you mean when you say the word infected, Thistledown?" Ariana demanded, her enthusiasm vanishing as quickly as it came. "Perhaps that's a poor word choice," Thistledown admitted ruefully. "Let's refer to it as modeling instead. Your body began learning how to access Aeri after being exposed to the source models." Lori suddenly giggled. I'm not sure if modeling is a good term to use. People will think you're talking about underwear models or something. Do they have models on this world? What do you think nobles are? Thistledown asked dryly. Nobility is essentially one big modeling contest as nobles show off their finery. It's not just imagine a lute player laying down some sick beats while the king struts down the medieval catwalk. Lori dissolved into a fit of giggles while the rest of them stared at the two of them uncomprehendingly. I just want to be very clear about this. Ariana stepped between Lori and Thistledown, forcing him to focus on her. I haven't been infected with some weird arcane pox. Thistledown studied her for a moment before responding. Correct? You haven't been infected with weird arcane pox? Thistledown, Raya chided him reprovingly, her lavender eyes amused. She's the one that said she wanted to be very clear about it, Thistledown declared defensively. I was as clear as a presidential campaign promise. Jesha gasped, squeezing her large eyes closed with a look of pain. Uh-oh, Raya muttered with a worried frown. Not another one. Are you okay? Ariana asked Jesha quickly, lowering herself to study Jesha in concern. Are you hurt? No, Jesha replied slowly as she carefully opened her eyes. I just felt like my brain was melting for a second. So it's gone now. Ariana didn't look convinced, watching Jesha closely. Are you sure? Can I get you some water? Jesha smiled at her gratefully and shook her head. No, really, it's fine now, but thank you. What did you mean, not another one? Thistledown asked Raya with narrowed eyes. The same thing happened to Shalay a few times on the way here, Raya explained with an anxious look at Shalay. Father said this can happen to older souls when they have core soul recall. Do you know anything about this? Souls are one mystery, Kalath, and I know very little about, Thistledown replied with a searching gaze at Jesha. Spirits are another matter, but souls are from outside of our reality. They are very difficult to study. Aren't souls and spirits the same thing? Thalion asked in confusion. No, not at all, Thistledown replied with a shake of his head. Souls existed long before this universe existed. From what we have learned, they attach themselves to intelligences and act as the long-term memory storage for every experience you have. Spirits are merely the bodies you have before becoming mortal. A soul attaches to your spirit once your spirit reaches an advanced state of intelligence. When we dissolve a spirit in a drain, the soul remains unharmed and finds a new host to attach to, almost like a parasite. The memories of the former hosts aren't directly accessible, but they influence your personality. Some people do seem to have a certain level of soul recall, where they can remember the previous lives the soul experienced, but that's rare. I don't know anything about this core soul memory that Lochnar is referring to. He knows a lot more about that kind of stuff than we do. So, you wouldn't be able to create some kind of barrier to keep them from having core soul memory recall? Lorenessa asked with a note of despair in her voice. I don't know. I've never tried, Thistledown replied slowly. Why would you want to prevent core recall? Lorenessa glanced at Jesha and shook her head dismissively. It doesn't matter. Thistledown glanced at Rhea. She shook her head slightly. He would have to ask her later, when the others weren't present. Oh yeah, Lochnar found Kalath, Rhea added brightly. What? Lori demanded, her face full of hope. And you're just telling us now? Where is he? Thistledown listened intently as they explained how Lochnar had found Kalath's physical body, and then to Jessica's idea of using gravitonium in the Dark Realm to fish Kalath out. That's not a bad idea at all, Jessica, Thistledown congratulated her admiringly. We'll have to find some gravitonium somewhere. Yeah, about that, Jessica said hesitantly. We already know where a lot of gravitonium is. Lochnar is already testing it out. Where is this mysterious gravitonium? Thistledown asked with a puzzled frown. It's in the throne room, Jessica replied with an apologetic smile. Thistledown closed his eyes as he felt a sinking sensation in his gut. Please tell me Lochnar didn't destroy the catalyst. Lochnar didn't destroy the catalyst, Shalay told him, biting her lip as she tried to keep from smiling. Thistledown reached out with his Aeri to the throne room and felt the remains of the catalyst. Hey, you told me to tell you he didn't destroy it? Shalay pointed out when she felt him reaching out with his Aeri. I was just following your orders. Thistledown sighed tiredly as he stared back into Shalay's mirthful eyes. He could tell Lochnar was already gone, somewhere in the dark realm. He hoped the loss of the catalyst was worth Calath's life. The catalyst would have made destroying any elemental armies Jared could throw at them like child's play. There were going to be a lot more casualties now. I think it's time for everyone to get what sleep they can with what's left of the night, Thistledown stated, standing up from the table and moving toward the door. We'll discuss tomorrow's plans at breakfast, assuming Calath isn't back yet. They all stood up and began filing out of his room. Raya patted his shoulder sympathetically as she passed him. He frowned when he noticed Lorenessa gazing at Shalay with a look he recognized all too well. He had seen that look on too many people's faces to not recognize it. His frown deepened when he noticed Lorenessa gazing at Jessica with the same lovesick look. This was going to be one very interesting week. At least the king was dead. His bigoted decrees wouldn't last long with Princess Rosala running the show. Sighing tiredly, Thistledown went to bed, hoping to get a few hours of sleep. Jessica stood in the hallway outside of Thistledown's door with the rest of their group. Jesha was looking up and down the hall curiously. "So, which room should I take?" she asked hesitantly. "Everything past the third door down is available," Thalion answered helpfully. "I suppose Leanne's is technically available since she's staying in Michael's room." "You're welcome to share my room if you want, Jesha," Lori offered hopefully. "The beds are humongous, so there's plenty of room for both of us." Jesha nodded with a smile, clearly sensing Lori's fear of sleeping alone in a strange place. "I actually have a room in the north wing of the palace that's a lot nicer than these rooms," Jessica told Lorenessa and Shalay, unable to stop a blush from climbing her neck and flooding her cheeks. Shalay smiled seductively at her, undoubtedly feeling her hopeful desire through the strange spirit link that had formed between them. Lorenessa eyed the two of them speculatively for a moment before her lips curled into a small smile. "That sounds perfect." Jessica led the two of them toward her rooms on shaking legs. She could feel Shalay's desire raging through the spirit link, just as powerful as her own. The walk up to her rooms went by in a blur. The closer they came to her rooms, the more powerful the passion raging through her body became. She tried to open her door, but her hand was shaking so badly that she couldn't get a grip on it. Shalay gently took her hand in her own and opened the door for her. They entered the suite of rooms, and she heard a gasp next to her and looked over. Shalay was staring around the opulent room in amazement. An enormous canopy bed lay in the middle of the floor, surrounded by comfortable chairs. An ornate vanity sat on one side of the bed. Expensive paintings and tapestries covered the walls. There was a large glass tub in the corner, easily large enough for 5 people. As soon as Shalay saw the tub, she began moving toward it. "I don't suppose you two want to share a bath?" Shalay asked suggestively. "I'll scrub your backs, among other things." Jessica's heart pounded like she had sprinted a mile. She felt Lorenessa's hands on her hips as the other woman pushed her over to the tub and began undressing her. Being able to feel your emotions should make this educational. Shalay purred in a voice that sent tingles racing down her spine.